So I go in there, and I mean, it's out of control. It is out of control. Kids are like up, they're not in their chairs, and there's these two girls that look at me and say, "We're going to the office. We can't take this anymore." I'm like, "Wait, stop." I'm like, "Just hold on." Like pull them to the side, talk to them or whatever. And I just saw that things were not going well. Okay? They were not going well.
Welcome to the Teach Bigger podcast. This is episode number 5.
Hey, Pratt. How'd your day go?
Things are not going well.
So, hey, today we're going to keep it real. We are going to share some of our not so shining moments in our careers. Some of those moments that really help shape who we are today. It's very real. No additives or preservatives. And we're just going to share those with you. And I said share so many times. So
right. Well, I mean, here's the thing. We learn from each other's struggles, and we've had our share of struggles, and we've learned some valuable lessons from them along the way. I've also learned quite a few lessons from seeing other people's struggles. So we're just going to share some of that with you today. Right. Hopefully you'll walk away kind of feeling refreshed, but at the same time, you'll walk away going, I think I know what I need to do in this situation.
So there we go. I'll let you start.
Well, I'm going to start by sharing.
I know you have a lot of bad stories.
Right. Most of my stories are bad. No. Right. I'm going to start by sharing a kind of an interesting story. It's not from when I was teaching. It's actually from when I was a student. But I was thinking back on this as we were preparing this episode, and I was thinking to myself, I had a math teacher in junior high. And, we weren't terribly bad children. But I guess
that's what bad children say.
Right. I guess we were just junior high kids, Yeah. And we'll call her Miss D, okay? And
was it Miss Debbie?
No. Quit trying. Everybody's trying to guess who it was right now.
Miss Daniels.
Right.
Little Debbie.
Okay. So
snack cakes.
Right. So Miss D, the thing I remember about her is I didn't like math, but that had nothing to do with her. I just didn't like math. But she was my math teacher, so automatically, you math teachers out there, unfortunately, a lot of kids are against you to begin with. I know I was one of them. But I was a good kid in school. I never really got in trouble. I was scared to get in trouble, honestly. If you've ever met my dad, you would know why. But so I didn't misbehave in school. But, Miss D, she was not the kind of teacher that really spent extra time with students. There wasn't a lot of building relationships. It was just come in, do math, leave. And that didn't work well. And so I recall the kids really rebelled in her class. And again, this was a long time ago, and the kids weren't real bad back then. But looking at it, they would do some pretty ugly things to her. But I remember it all culminated to this one event. We were sitting in class, and kids were talking and just generally off task, and she went on a tirade and started screaming and yelling at everyone. This was pretty commonplace. And so whenever she would scream and yell at everyone, everybody gets quiet for a moment. And maybe you're a teacher that is a screamer and a yeller, and I highly encourage you to change, because the kids will be quiet for a moment and then they'll revolt. And that's what happens.
It raises your blood pressure too.
Yeah, it's not worth
stressful.
But that's what she did, and there was this moment of complete silence in the room. And I remember as a student going, oh no, what's going to happen next? And so everyone's really quiet. And then, you could see this look on her face like, I told them. But the problem is she didn't tell us. We told her. And what happened next was something that I don't know if they had planned it or what. I was a good kid. I knew nothing of it. But this is what happened next. One student went like this. And I looked around, and I'm like,
was it
what
you?
No, it wasn't me. And I was
wanted to ask for the record.
Right. I was like, what is going on? What is that? And then the next thing you know, another student's like, And And then it became like wildfire. The entire class was going, and of course,
if this was in choir, it would be okay.
Right, but this is not choir, this is math. And of course, our lips are closed, so you can't really necessarily tell just by looking who's doing it.
Terrible.
And for a moment, me being the nice kid I was, I went, like that, just to kind of join in.
I knew.
But then I felt so bad. I felt so bad. I was like, I can't do that. So anyways, she exploded. They called an administrator. It was just bad, And I don't know. Hopefully nothing like that's ever happened, because kids are kids, and kids for the most part are kind of ugly sometimes.
You have to outsmart them.
You do. But, I look back to that and I think to myself,
how bad of a child you were.
No, I think to myself how, she could have probably avoided so much of those problems had she taken the time to talk to students and get to know them and just like create positive and appropriate relationships.
And I think, as a kid, it's entertaining. And so they, the kids know that, hey, if we do this, she's going to go,
Look, let me tell you something.
It's going to be a show, so let's do that. It's a game.
Know.
It's a game they play. So.
It is a game. My first year teaching was my worst year teaching, as it is for a lot of people. And I had a class of 6th grade boys. There were like 27 boys in that class, and it was all boys. If you've ever taught a class of just 6th grade boys, which most of you probably have not, let me tell you, that's terrible. Mm-hmm. That's just miserable. And I didn't know what I was doing as a first-year teacher, and their goal every day was to see what they could do to push my buttons. Mm-hmm. And so we'd go in, and from the time the bell rang to the time the bell rang, it was nonstop heckle me. And
it's probably funny because I could see you turning red.
Right, I was really red.
I'm pretty sure.
Unfortunately, I was kind of like Miss D. I was a yeller and a screamer my first year.
Yeah, I can see that.
And so they got me wound up. They really did. And so I encourage you to build those good relationships with your students and make sure that you're not just screaming and yelling, because they see right through it, and it's not effective.
That's not effective. Well, that's good. Okay, well, my story comes from my first year in a new school district, new school, and it was not expected. The class that we had was a large class, and we split the class into two. If you didn't know from the previous podcast, I'm band director, and so we split them into the different sections. And so, anyway, I had one section, and another teacher had another section, and they were in the auditorium. And so I went down to the auditorium for something. Okay, and when I say this was not expected, it was not expected. But you have to, do what's needed for the kids. So I go in there, and, it's out of control. It is out of control. Kids are, up. They're not in their chairs. And there's these two girls that look at me and say, "We're going to the office. We can't take this anymore." I'm like, "Wait, stop." I'm like, "Just hold on." Pull them to the side, talk to them or whatever. And I just saw that things were not going well. Okay? Right. They were not going well. So in that moment, I'm like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do to help this? Because we want these kids to stay, and band and things like that. So what happened was, I'm like, okay, we have to take this teacher out of the situation. I'll just go ahead and take over, which I didn't want to do, but I know it was best for the kids. And so this was not an easy feat, because these kids had more than a year of doing what they wanted to do. So it didn't matter if I was the best band director ever. They were used to doing what they wanted to do. And so I had to come in and change that. And it was a mess, because these kids, they were in an auditorium. And so they were 7th graders and some were 8th graders, but it was mostly 7th graders. And so it was fun for them to just try to come in and hide behind the curtain, right? Or it was fun for them to try to come in and go to get their instrument, but never come back to their chairs, right? And just hide somewhere in the back, or run around the auditorium, or just find ways to do things they were not supposed to do and not being on the stage. And so what I had to do was be patient, right? And one by one, I had to pull them aside and, be calm and be consistent on what I expected, and let them know hey, this is not the best way to do things. I know you guys have done things this way, but you guys are not going to be productive doing this way, and be very, very consistent in that. But one by one, I had to pull them aside and build that relationship and show them, hey, I'm not the bad guy. I'm here to help you guys, because you can do well, right? And that took a long time. That took several weeks and months. But by the end of the year, it was a calm environment. The kids, they were learning. They were able to do things individually. They were answering questions. They were motivated. And the class was not miserable, as it was from the beginning.
Right. Yeah. And one of the key points there, I hope that you noticed, is that he had to do it one by one.
One by one.
You have to pull a kid aside. Maybe it's like right after class. Maybe it's right before class. But you have to build that bond with them, and they have to learn to trust you. And once they start to trust you, they'll start to do what they say.
And one by one. Here's a great example. So there was this one kid, and he was a 7th grade boy. As Pratt said, if you taught a class with boys, you know how they are, right? So this kid, he's just like, no, he was running around, right? And so as he was running around, I couldn't take my attention off the kids. He was like in the auditorium part. We were on the stage and said, I'm going to have to take care of him later. And so I kept teaching the students, and then I had to handle him later. And then I dealt with him. And then, every day it's like, okay, I'm going to take this kid and I'm going to have to help, fix him today, or, whatever. And one by one, things started to change. And I just stayed calm. I stayed firm, and I stayed consistent. And, things turned around. And it paid off so much. And it was harder for me, too, because I didn't have a chance to start the class. And so the culture that I expected was not started from day one. So it's really hard to come in and change like that. You have to work, twice as hard. But it can be done. You just have to be relentless in establishing the culture for learning, And so that was a challenging year. But at the end of the year, the class, they came in how I wanted them to come in. They were able to ask and answer questions. They were engaged, and it really was pretty pleasant toward the end of the year. At the beginning, not so much. But, I just remember that was one of my things, like, oh my gosh, it was one of the classes that I dreaded going to because I had to work so hard to get them to do anything. But yeah, so that was one thing that I remember always.
So, we all have these bad days. We all have these bad experiences, these bad situations that sometimes are not even our fault. But
right, I know.
You got to stick to the plan. You got to build relationships. You've got to be consistent. You have to have procedures and routines. And when you do those things, it will turn around. It takes time, but it'll turn around.
And you have to be patient. Things like long-term things don't happen immediately. And so you have to be the adult there and, look at the end goal and, one by one, student by student, issue by issue, those things will start to get better. And then one day you'll come in and things will be going the way that you want them to go. And it shocks you sometimes, and it's usually when you least expect it. But your being consistent really will help you out. Yeah.
So look, we want to hear from you. Yes. We want to hear about maybe your bad day or your struggle. Right. Because as you share those things, we can all learn from each other. Right. So we would encourage you to maybe email us. Our email address is info@teachbigger.com, info@teachbigger.com. Maybe share your story with us. And we're asking for a group of people, as many people as want to share their stories. And what we would like to do is maybe choose a few of those and feature your story or you on one of our upcoming podcasts. So great. Yeah, because then that would give us an opportunity to hear from you and learn from your struggles as you're learning from ours.
As you know, we're all in this together. And, sometimes we vent, but you have to always think about it like every situation is a growing point, and so we want to use these to grow and, also to share because as educators, we're all in this together. And so that's what we want to, share.
So, hey, hang in there. Keep doing your best.
Hang in there.
Keep doing big things. So
the weekend is coming.
Yeah. That's all for today.
All right.
So remember, go do something big.